Good morning, everyone. This is Susan Connor from the Early Intervention Training Program, and we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 9 o'clock, and we are scheduled today for this webinar from 9 to 10:15, so we'll go ahead and get started. You are joining the webinar called Successful Transitions for Infants and Toddlers, Ideas for Moving with Ease Between Everyday Routines. We are thrilled to have this topic. This is a topic that is often requested and something I know that we all struggle with as parents, as early interventionists, as child care providers, supporting families and children. So today, as we get started, I just want to do a real brief, quick introduction of who we have as our presenters today. We have Michaelene Ostrosky from the University of Illinois. She is the head and Gold Stick Family Scholar for the Department of Special Education at the university. We have Rosa Milagros Santos, who is a professor in the Department of Special Education at the university. And we have Butler, who is a postdoctoral fellow with the Department of Special Ed at the university. And all three of these presenters have had varied experiences supporting families and child care providers around challenging behaviors. We're real excited to have them with us today. Our moderators, for those of you who have joined us on the past weeks, Ted Burke and Maria Maddox were moderating. Today, as many of you know, Ted is off in sunny Hawaii, which was very good timing on his part. But we'll have Maria Maddox and myself today as your moderators. And we'll really be here just to kind of support the webinar and the curriculum as we move through it. Maria Maddox, as you know, is a consultant with the training program, and I am the assistant director for the...
Okay, great. So this is Mickey again. We're going to start off by telling you who we are, and hopefully you'll be able to figure out voices. And as we transition from one to the next of us, we'll try to tell you who the next person is, so you will kind of keep track of who's speaking now. So I'm Mickey. I'm at the top of the photo with my little son. I'm the mom of a 15-year-old who had a high-risk pregnancy. My son Cameron was born as a preemie and spent 11 days in the NICU being tube-fed and on oxygen, and you can kind of see in the photo he's being tube-fed there. It shows him being tube-fed. So I had some very brief experiences with EI when Cameron came home from the hospital, but I'm happy to say now he is 6'3" at age 15, towering over both my husband and I, and often reminding us who's the tallest one in the family and that he can get things off the shelf whenever we need the help. So that's my story. So let Ami introduce herself.
All right. So I'm Ami Santos, and I'm the one in orange, and that little girl there is now 9 years old and reminds me every day that she can do lots of things. But as I was taught, as we were prepping for this morning's session, we were talking about how many, what kinds of things we had to do this morning before we got here. And this little girl, who's not quite little, reminds me every day about what I need to think about to make sure that our transitions are going to be smooth and that we always start off with a good morning. She always wakes up with a really nice smiley face, but generally has her own pace for going in the morning, and doesn't help, but I have to rush to the office to get to a webinar. So.
And I'm Anne, and the picture on the right-hand corner with the two boys, that's my picture, and that's recent, so that's from November. So I have a 30-month-old and a 9.5-month-old. So figuring out transitions with a toddler and an infant has been really interesting for us. And so hopefully some of my examples can help because we've managed juggling the two.
Okay, so this is Mickey again, so I'm going to walk you through the first couple slides and share some information with you. Our objectives for today are first to consider the reasons for challenging behavior during transition. So when we think about everyday activities with infants and toddlers and sometimes challenging behavior occurs, we want to talk about why do they happen. So that will be one thing we'll talk about. We also will share some strategies that you can use both with infants and toddlers. We see through the poll that a lot of you are interventionists yourself, but also some strategies that you can use with families to decrease the stress and the challenging behavior that often comes up during during these transitions. And then third, we're going to help you consider some ways to share these strategies with others. So how might you then share these ideas with parents as well as use them yourself in your own work with infants and toddlers? So when we think about transitions, and we think particularly about infants and toddlers, what does that mean? Transitions are those movements when you change from one activity to another during the daily routine. So for infants and toddlers, if we think about what are their routines during the day, that might mean diaper changes, it could mean meal times, snacks. When you're running errands, so you're going from one place to the other, there are transitions involved there. When you think about the end of a playtime with a toddler and cleaning up to then get ready for bath time or a diaper change or doing having a snack, all of those are transitions. And when we think about routines, those are those predictable events. They're repeated, they happen often, and those for infants and toddlers are really the daily tasks of their lives. So those predictable routines of even things like diaper changing, having meals, those are the routines of their life. So we can think about things like tickling. Maybe you have routines where every time when you're finished diapering a baby, you tickle the baby to kind of signal the closure of that activity. Or maybe you kiss the top of your toddler's head after every hand washing. You might have kind of specific routines that you're not even aware of, that for that child they expect certain things. Even with my 15-year-old, we still lay in bed every night and we often read a book, say prayers, I say goodnight to him. We have the routines that for 15 years have gone on, and I wait for, I don't look forward, I guess, to the day when he says, Mom, you don't need to come in here tonight. So, okay, so we want you to think now about your transitions this morning. So think about that moment when the alarm clock went off or whatever triggered you to get out of bed. And just jot down in your head how many transitions you went through before you got to work this morning or showed up on this webinar. So think through when you got out of bed, you took a shower, you got dressed, whatever those routines are, just make a little some flash marks and jot down how many of those there are. And fill them in this, we have a little poll for you. So we want to get an idea of how many there are for you. So fill in, was it A, 1 to 3, B, 4 to 6, C, 7 to 10, D, 11 to 15, or E, more than 16. So as you jot those down, fill in how many transitions you went through. For those of you who are putting your numbers in the chat box, look above under your name where it says participants. You'll see 4 icons up there. And if you go to the icon to the right, it's a place where you can actually take the poll. So if you pull it down, it'll show A, B, C, D, E, or none. And you just fill them in up there, and that way it'll calculate it along with everybody else. We'll give you another 10 seconds or so. Well, when we can see the results, we see that 38% of us had between 7 and 10 transitions this morning. It's no wonder we're all tired before we even get to work, right? So if you think about, and this is pretty early, 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:15.
Or even the person in Montana. That's
right. Well, you're really early. And then if you think about a challenging behavior that may have occurred during any of those transitions, spilled your coffee, icy road conditions, so it takes a longer commute. I check email in the morning, which sometimes means I might get a not so pleasant email from somebody, which might cause me to be in not the best mood as I then go to make lunches for myself and my son. Maybe you couldn't find a file folder for work. You're having a bad hair day. There are challenging behaviors that might occur for us during any of those transitions, and depending on how we handle them, how we're prepared, are we hungry, are we tired, will impact how we react to that actual transition. So coming into work, if I encountered icy road conditions or my doors were froze and it took longer and I'm late for a meeting, then my behavior going into the next activity is certainly going to be impacted by that transition and by what happened. So I'm going to now turn over the mic to Ann, and Ann's going to talk a little bit about her morning routine with 2 toddlers and why transitions can be difficult.
Okay, so these are my 2 sons, Leo and Jack, and so typically in our morning routine, it seems like people had between 7 transitions and then 11 to 15, and so with toddlers and with children, it adds to the typical morning routine. So for us, it starts at 5:30 in the morning, and with them, there are, for each one of them, different transitions that can make it difficult. And when Leo was first born, the picture on the right is of Jack, and this is how I found him one morning when Leo was first born. So he's standing on the counter, and you can kind of see he took out all of the baking soda, and at the time he had not very much verbal communication, and so he was just upset that every single transition that he had was not the same anymore, because Leo needed to get up and eat, I needed to change his diaper at different times, and so that really threw him off. And so one thing is that, so when working with families, it did take us about 2 months to really get a routine down and to really first have our routines in place so that then we had smoother transitions. And I think that that's important to consider when you're really looking at why transitions are sometimes difficult for kids. So transitions often involve extended wait times. So toddlers are waiting as they need to get their coats and hats on to go outside and play in the snow. So an activity might be really fun, but that waiting to get ready is not so fun. They might have to stop doing something that they like and start something they may not. So I'm playing with my toys and now I have to change my diaper. So that can be difficult. Another example is, so they might not know what to expect when the transition is occurring or what you expect of them. So it's time for cleanup, and with Jack we had to work on how to put toys away, and so I had to model for him because he just didn't know, is it okay to throw toys in the toy box or am I supposed to place them where they go? So for him it was a difficult transition because he wasn't really sure what to expect. And similar to the example of this transition time and he didn't know what to expect, he also had limited communication other than his behavior when Leo was born. So his behavior was really communicating, I'm really upset right now that there are all of these changes that I can't control, but these things like dumping out toys and dumping out baking soda, standing on the counter, these were all things that he was trying to say, this is difficult for me. So I'll give everyone a second just to read this quote. So okay, so this, we always think about when parents are experiencing difficulties with their infants and toddlers when they're trying to leave home and go into the community, they may stop doing these events because they just become really difficult. And if everyone, if they're going out and their toddler is having a tantrum at Target and everyone is looking and it becomes difficult to manage and to know what to do, then parents can sometimes just stop taking their kids out. And so I always think, a family that I was working with, I was just asking them, so, you know, what are some things that you'd like to do with your son? And the things that they mentioned were really things that are typical routines. Like, I'd just like to be able to go to the grocery store. I'd like to be able to go to church. And a really big goal for them was to be able to go to a baseball game. So really, once these activities become difficult, they may be avoided, which is why it's so important to be providing some strategies for when that happens.
And we see that many of you are making comments that families that it resonates, this kind of quote resonates with you, and you're hearing this kind of thing from a lot of the families that you also work with.
Okay, so we have another trivia question for you. So research shows that in preschool classrooms, they spend as much as how much of their day transitioning between activities? So 5 to 10%, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, or 20 to 35. So you can use the icon in the left-hand corner.
I should have had the answer.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Just a reminder to folks, make sure that you're using the poll function to respond to the poll questions. If you look under your name at the very top, you'll see 4 boxes with icons in them. The last one is a box that either has a letter or a checkbox in it. If you push that, you'll open up a window and you can select your answer, your response there. Thanks.
Okay, so D, 20 to 35% of their time, and often in preschool classrooms, it can be as many as 15 to 20 actual transitions between activities.
Okay, this is Ami. So the next 3 slides just really are reminders for us of our role as providers for working with families. And so DEC, which is the Division for Early Childhood, is our professional organization, and basically reminds us that our roles and responsibilities in supporting families that we serve in early intervention. So really looking at promoting active participation in the family in whatever it is that we do. So if we're helping them with transitions, what are we doing to support them around that? Making sure that our service plans really are driven by the family's needs, and that we're supportive of families in achieving whatever goals they might have for their children. Now this pretty much lines up with the principles of early intervention, and if you're not familiar with this, you should be, and I hope that you participate in other webinars or other training sessions that EITP puts out related to the early intervention principles. And in particular, our goal as early intervention providers is really to provide families with the assistance and resources that they will need to be able to enhance their child's learning and development through everyday opportunities, through these routines. So here you are. Your role is basically to learn and use strategies that support families to effectively help their children move with ease between routines. So at this point, we're going to pause and see if there are any questions, and Maria and Susan will be helping through, looking through the questions if you have any, and we'll be happy to respond to them at this point.
Right. I have been kind of scanning through the comments, and there's a lot of folks resonating with what you're sharing here, and we'll give folks a few seconds here if they have any questions they want to type in. But at the moment, ladies, I do not see any questions that have come through. We'll give folks a few seconds if they have any. Melinda is sharing that she is anxiously awaiting some of the strategies that you're going to be sharing. I think we are probably good to move on.
All right. Okay. So, and again, just type in your questions as you go through the slides, and we'll have another moment when we can we'll pause to make sure that we can respond to questions as they arise. So one important thing we can help parents realize is that behavior is communicative. So look at this very adorable little baby, and if there was a little bubble that was coming out of her mouth, what would it say? So use your chat button to throw out a few ideas of what might this baby be telling us at this point. I'm so excited. That's what Melinda says. Yep. Ooh, you caught me. That's a good one. I want to eat the pumpkin. Yeah. Wow, a ball. Good. These are good ones. I love orange. This kitty's trying to steal my pumpkin. So this is great. This is heavy. And so, like, yeah, this is fun. This pumpkin feels smooth or bumpy, or where did this cat come from? You know, suddenly there's like a cat that just appeared next to me. I think there's how can I put this in my mouth? I like that. That's really funny. So all these things that could be that this baby is telling us just with that face, right? And all of this, and maybe sounds that she's making. So when children engage in challenging behavior, they're also trying to tell us something. And our job as providers, as parents, is to be a detective, if you will, and figure out what is it that they're trying to tell us. You know, they can be telling us, this is so difficult, I really need help. Or as Anne was telling us earlier, I'm confused, I really don't know. What am I supposed to be doing now? Who is this baby that just came home with you? You know, or I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm wet, I'm sad. I need a break. I really don't want to stop this activity. I'm having too much fun playing with this pumpkin, or, you know, don't take me away from here. And so all these things with their behavior are telling us, they're communicating something to us. Okay, so we'll do another trivia question. Tell us what you think, which of these behaviors is communicative. So is crying communicative, hitting, clinging to a parent, whining, all of the above? So use your function, the poll function with the letter A on the fourth icon right there. If you, I don't know if there. I don't know if I can draw a picture around that. So remember, so you could use that part that's right below your name. Okay, looks like everybody thinks that all of these behaviors are communicative, and that is important to remember, that children's behaviors, whatever they may be, are telling us something of what it is that they want, especially children who are not yet using words, perhaps, and are just learning to develop some of these verbal, you know, using some specific words to tell us when they're feeling something and when they're thinking something. All right. So this is Linny, and Linny is a 2-year-old who stays home with her mom 3 days a week and attends a Mom's Day Out program for 2 days a week. So while she's a fairly flexible child, Linny takes her time to move between activities. In her child care program, she is often the last one to get to another activity, last one to get done with snacks, takes the long way back from the outdoor area back to the classroom. And when in a rush, she's often carried to the next activity. In those times, she would protest and will not immediately engage in the new activity. Instead, would cry and or cling to the parent or the adult until she can be coaxed into the new activity. So as we go through the next few slides, we want you to have a Linny in your mind as you go. Think about a child you're working with, a family you're working with who are struggling with transitions between routines activities too. We're going to think about how to help that Linny, that child, by first thinking about her environment and then making sure it's set up for her to have a successful transition throughout the day. Then we'll tell you how to specifically support your Linny, and we'll do this by giving you 3 tips.
Okay, this is Mickey back. Now we're going to start talking about a few specific strategies that will help you as an interventionist move with ease between transitions with the infants and toddlers who are in your care, as well as tips that you can then share with families, with parents and family members to plan for successful transitions. And what we want you to bear in mind as we think about these three tips are, I want you to think about three words: individualize, plan, and engage. So as you individualize, plan, and engage, and those three words will come up frequently across the next 10 slides or so, we want you to always remember that behavior is communicative. So as you individualize, plan, and engage, if children are struggling and engaging in challenging behavior during the transition, you want to think about, what's this child trying to tell me? Why is your Lenny that you're focusing on, why is that little girl Lenny struggling? What's she trying to tell me? So individualizing, planning, and engage. So let's move to tip number 1. Tip number 1 is consider the child's needs and abilities. So here comes the individualizing. Then you're going to plan accordingly. But we really want you to focus here on, think about the child's personality, his or her temperament. What are the strengths and the needs as you plan for successful transitions? So if you're working with a group of, say, a child care provider who has many children in her class, as you're thinking about successful transitions or helping them think about successful transitions, and they think about the child who's struggling, think about, how can we individualize for that child? So thinking about how to plan successful transitions, but also considering individual children's personalities, temperament, strengths, and needs. We want to help parents and caregivers put themselves in their child's shoe. So think about, why is the child struggling here? Or if I'm this child and I'm engaged playing with Legos or playing with some blocks or whatever toys, bristle blocks, and now you're going to take me to go have a diaper change, and you just come in and whisk me away for a diaper change without saying anything ahead of time, prepping me, giving me a warning, in a minute, it's going to be time to change your diaper. For that child, we can now imagine how that might be a source of stress or cause that child to get frustrated. Think also about things like running from one errand to another on a Saturday or on a weekend, that if we put ourselves in the child's shoes, we can think about how exhausting that might be for the child, in and out of the car seat, in and out from one environment to another where the temperature is changing, stimulation is changing, maybe only doing 2 errands on a weekend, or doing a couple errands and then taking a break and getting a snack or doing something fun. So thinking about those kind of things so that we can help individualize based on the child's needs and abilities, and then plan accordingly. All right. For some toddlers, especially toddlers, things like, if you look to the right of this slide, having photos. I could put on my shoes and hat, shoes, coat, hat. Having photos can help some older toddlers and then on to preschoolers, but by seeing photos. And here are some photos of Anne's little guy, as kind of thinking through, what are the steps to get ready at child care and or at home. Also the use of timers. There are a lot of visual timers that, as children get up into the older toddler age, they can start even seeing the visual and start realizing, ooh, when it gets from green to red, or the number, something's going down, or the egg timer is going down, this activity is going to end. All right, so then when we share things with parents and family members, we'll need to consider, how can we help parents to think about things. So first of all, is the schedule predictable? So, jump to number 2. Some families, their routines are not very predictable, which can cause children to really have struggles between transitions. So how can we help or think about the strengths of a predictable schedule, what that does for a child, how that helps a child, but also, if the schedule is not very predictable, are there things we can do to help make that schedule more predictable? Also, are there ways to take breaks between activities? So the example I gave you about running from one errand to another, is it possible to do a couple errands and then go to the park and play a little bit to give the child a break? I know in my own family, my husband knows that I cannot do 6 or 7 errands on a Saturday without getting food. You know, he has learned over the years that if I say I'm hungry, we better be pulling into some fast food restaurant or Panera and get some food, or I should have some granola in my bag, because once that blood sugar starts to drop, I'm not a happy camper to keep going to Menards and Home Depot and all those places. So, you know, children are the same way. They may not be able to communicate to us by saying, I need some food, but if we pay attention to their behavior and we serve as that detective like Ami was talking about, we can start figuring out, wow, you know, these Saturdays are kind of rough with my little one, and maybe I am doing too many errands with him or her without taking a break. Okay, showing the child what to do. Ann was talking about her son, and you know, you could get frustrated when the toddler's throwing all the toys in the toy box and making a lot of noise and breaking things, or you can show the child, this is how we have to take care of our toys, we have to put them away gently or put them on the shelf, whatever it is we want. We can't expect that children just know what to do, but often we have to model and show them. Another thing we can help families think about, and we ourselves can think about as we work directly with infants and toddlers, is keeping children busy. Think about expectations like taking child to a restaurant and having to wait for food and expecting that the child will sit there for 15 minutes just waiting patiently for their food to come, or waiting in line at the bank. There can be lots of examples I'm sure we can think about. So helping families think, consider how to put together a little bag that they keep in their car or keep with them, with some books, with some photo albums, with some quiet toys that a child might be able to play with while they're waiting to keep that child busy. And preparing the child for what comes next. When my son was young, he always liked to know, you know, where are we going, what's coming next. So I would try to prepare him of, okay, first we're going to go here, and then we're going to go here, and then we'll be home. Or we're going to go here, and these are the people we're going to see, and it'll only take a few minutes, or it might be a long wait, and we have some books and we have some activities you can do while you're going to have to wait. Or this is a place where you're going to have to be, you know, kind of quiet. So we're going to bring some quiet toys to take to this activity. So thinking through, as you work with families, how you can help them through your conversations, as you listen to them talk about transitions they may be struggling with their child, how you can help them think through what's the schedule like, how are they keeping their child busy during those transitions, are they preparing their child for what comes next, are there too many transitions, does their child need to be taught some skills to help ease the transitions. All right? And then also, as we think about tip number one, and the point of individualizing and thinking about a child's strengths, abilities, and needs, thinking about using specific terms as you talk about the child with the family. So saying things like, Noah is so curious and likes to keep busy. So when you're out in the community and waiting between activities, you might consider having a bag of fun, quiet, novel things for him to entertain himself with, like some coloring, some bristle blocks, a photo album, some books. So, you know, being very specific about the child's strengths, the behaviors you hear the parents saying, and then what are some things they might be able to do. And then also talking about patterns of behavior instead of just the most recent event. So families who say things, you know, you might say to a family, you say that meal times are really difficult. If I came to your house at dinner every night this week, what are some things I might typically see? And then trying to help family members pay attention to the patterns that they're seeing, not just the one or two behaviors that happened yesterday, but these are the patterns. He's frequently leaving the table, or he's sitting there fussing while I'm trying to get the food on the table. So paying attention to what's happening repeatedly, and then trying to brainstorm with family members and work collaboratively to then solve those issues during transitions.
So, Nikki, I was just going to say, so this last point is really important for us to remember, because I think as we're trying to support families, it's really important for them to recognize, okay, maybe this just happened because you had this, you know, like one crazy schedule this one day when you had a surprise visitor and then all the things didn't happen the way they used to happen. And it doesn't mean that that behavior is going to be always like that for that child. And so what we're trying to get to here are those behaviors that are continually happening, despite, you know, that you might have, say, a set routine or things that are, but they continue, the child continues to struggle. So what you want to do, get out of looking for patterns, is really finding something that really is happening consistently across the days with the child, and not just a one-time event. And I think people are, you know, it's very quick for us to complain, oh, he always does this, but when in fact it maybe have only happened one day, and that's a very solvable issue. What you really want to try to get to are some of the other things that are just not as easily solved, because it's something that keeps happening all the time.
Absolutely. I love, too, and that you're kind of skimming the chat. It's hard to do this and pay attention to the chat, but I see some of you are even giving suggestions to each other, which is fabulous. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to to Ann, I'm sorry. And Ann's going to talk a little bit about tip number 2. So we just talked about individualizing. Now we're going to move to planning.
So tip number 2, plan ahead to help make everyday transitions go smoothly and help parents learn to plan ahead. So I saw in some of the comments that it can be difficult to help parents realize when transitions are difficult. And similar to what Mickey just said, really thinking about these everyday transitions that you have and seeing where the patterns are. Because planning ahead for those everyday transitions can really help move these things, like Ami just said, when you have a visitor and something is, now your routine has changed and things aren't going smoothly. You can really see that that's an isolated incident, and that's one particular behavior, while planning ahead can really, once you isolate these everyday transitions that are more likely to occur, it can be really helpful. So, for example, when you're talking to parents, you can say, all right, so what are the transitions that you feel happen every day? What are the ones that can be most difficult? And then thinking about, okay, so diaper changes are really difficult. How about having a stack of toys that you can use while you're changing diapers, and then, similar to what Mickey said, have a cue to your baby to let them know diaper changing is over. So do I have everything I need for diapering? Putting the wipes in the same spot, putting the diapers in the same spot, always changing the infants in the same spot. And then really help planning ahead so that transition can be run a little smoother. Can I get dinner ready before Cameron's bath? So, okay, I have to make dinner, and bath time, we have 45 minutes. How can I get this done? So thinking about, okay, well, if I put everything that I need for the bath in the bathroom and then move to dinner, then that will be ready. I can plan that ahead. Or thinking about really, sorry. So whenever I am working with families or talking to families, I always ask the amount of time it takes when a difficult transition occurs. And I always talk about, okay, so this is taking a really long time when your child is having a meltdown and a tantrum. So really thinking about it takes less time to think about your routines and plan ahead sometimes than it does. So being proactive takes less time than when you are trying to figure out how to manage this big meltdown. But being proactive, anticipating these changes, can really help make these transitions go smoothly. So we have another parent quote. We'll give everyone a minute to read. Okay, so when looking at this quote, really, as parents are refining their skills with transitions and trying to make them run smoother, really, they're learning things about caregiving too, based on their child's individual needs, their strengths, and it's really our job to help parents see that these unique strengths and needs can help bring the relationship together when they're, and really help them to plan ahead for that infant or toddler. So specifically for that child. And I saw, okay, so what do parents tell you is the biggest barrier to their ability to plan ahead? So just informally, when you're speaking to parents and they're saying, you know, I would love to plan ahead, but I have no idea where to start. So which of these do parents report to you? So you can use the icon on top underneath your name, which Ami has circled.
Oh, no, I think Maria probably.
Oh, someone else circled and answered.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you answer E to others, write your answers in the chat so we have an idea of what are some of the other barriers that you're considering. So those 6 of you that answered E so far, if you could just jot down what your ideas were.
Okay, so it looks like a majority of the responses are that there are too many things to juggle. We're just reading the rest of the comments. Okay, so that and D, they don't have time. So really, when we think about these barriers for parents, we want to think about ways that we can have them, some tips to address these barriers. So the next one, please. So what can you do to help when parents are saying, someone is getting in the way, or I don't have enough time? So really, emphasizing small changes is the best place to start. So just emphasizing that picking one transition and seeing success with it is the best place to start. So for example, so other people might get in the way. For that, there weren't too many people that replied that too many people get in the way, but really, if that were a barrier, you could suggest to the parent that, or yourself as the parent, can model for example, like a caregiver, like a grandparent that is watching the child and maybe doing something that's setting off the routine. So modeling what it might look like when, like Jack, if he doesn't take a nap at 12 and he takes a nap at 12:30, what that might look like when he takes a nap at 12, he sleeps for a longer time, he has a more successful afternoon. So just kind of explaining those kinds of things. The parent might not know where to start. You can maybe consider what things they have in a bag that they could take with them when there's a long wait time, or if there's a cranky toddler, a bored child. And I saw one of the common reasons was financial reasons, so always suggesting things that parents have at home that they can use. So things like empty, like plastic containers they can take with some new little objects from inside the house that they can pull out, and they have this little can of things to look at in the car. Or they don't know where to, there are too many things to juggle, so there's just not enough time, they can't juggle everything. So suggesting that they could really start a transition and almost use that time doubly. So you know that you have to do the laundry, you know that you have dishes to do, you have to get dinner ready, there are so many things going on. So do the laundry and have a stack of towels that your toddler can help you fold. Or while you're getting dinner ready, have your infant sit on the floor and play with some bowls so that you can get dinner ready. And just start introducing these routines and transitions while that they're going on so that you have enough time so that you're able to juggle things. So when working with parents and caregivers, you can offer them opportunities while you're talking. This is something about how really parents and caregivers may feel really frustrated that what they've been doing wasn't working. A transition came up they couldn't anticipate for. So really just asking specific questions and listening to what transitions have, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then when you offer suggestions, allowing them time to consider these ideas and suggestions for what will work in their schedules, in their homes, to see how they can make that fit. So now we're going to pause for a second for questions.
Okay, we did have a question earlier on in the morning from two Marys, and the question had to do with dealing with, I'm going to find it again here, with folks who with children who have severe behaviors during transitions, such as hitting and biting and tantruming. And so what kind of strategies might you suggest for families who have toddlers, infants and toddlers who are behaving in this manner during transitions?
I think, this is Nikki, I think in those kind of instances, so if parents say, repeatedly that this is a pattern, that every time it's time to go outside, my child, to get dressed, my child has a meltdown. So you try to help them figure out first what's the pattern. So what is it that we would say is triggering that behavior? And then start thinking about why do they think that behavior is happening. So is it that the child doesn't have enough warning before the transition to go outside? Is it that the child doesn't know where you're going next? Is it that the child needs more time, like our example of Linny, who needed sometimes more time to go from one activity to another? So maybe you want to start the transition earlier if possible. Is it that there's something about putting on that coat that the child doesn't like the texture of that coat, how it feels, the sound of it rubbing on his neck, the collar? Trying to be that detective and figure out what is it that might be causing the child to engage in the challenging behavior, and then going from there to problem solve.
Thanks, Mickey. Mary also kind of had, along that same vein, question about children who like to run away or be chased. And I don't know, was your answer pretty similar, or do you have some additional suggestions for that?
Well, I think for any child who runs away, you always have to worry about safety. So there are times where you can't ignore that behavior. You're going out from the grocery store to get in the car, and you cannot ignore it. There's no option. You have to hold my hand at that point. That's not an option. What I've seen happen, and Ami and Ann are nodding their head, is kind of in the classroom where, or in a child care where it becomes a game. And so then you need to somehow teach that child that you have to ignore some of that behavior as long as the safety of that child and others in the room, it's okay. And teach that child there are times where we can play this kind of running game, and that's when we're outside on the playground, and finding time to make sure that happens, so that a child who likes that running and chasing has that time, but in kind of an appropriate case. But there are times where you cannot ignore. There are safety issues of you can't run now, and I'm sorry if you don't want to hold my hand, but this isn't safe.
Yeah, and I think that's really just, this is Ami, and it's really just part of that routine building. Like, okay, when we're at the grocery store and we're walking in the parking lot, you have to be holding my hand. And it's really interesting because that has to be established with the child so that that it doesn't, that they understand, okay, in this context, within this parameters, I need to be doing certain things. And if that routine's not set up like that, it's going to be hard, because then the child really will try to do things that would make it fun for them. Oh boy, I really just need to exert all this energy right now, and I'm just going to run. Or like children in big spaces are such a, the magnet for, it's such a good place for them to, like, whoa, open place and run, and if you're okay with it, it's fine as long as they're safe. But then I think there are certain times when you say, okay, you can't be doing that here. You're at the mall, you're at the store, you can't let them run up and down. those spaces because they could run into something, or as what happened with my niece one time, she was running down, we were in an outdoor mall, and one of the doors from one of the stores opened just as she was running. So she ran straight into the door as this person was walking out the store. I mean, it's one of those things where you just have to really help them understand what some of these
I also think, too, if you have a family you're working with who is really struggling with this, you then might have to set up opportunities to help them practice. So, you know, the child who doesn't want to hold hands when going to the grocery, they may have to have some opportunities where we're going to try going to the grocery. We don't absolutely need milk tonight, but we're going to start practicing. So tonight we're going to go. And if, in fact, he doesn't hold my hand when we get out of the car, or he's fussing, you know, you have a strategy that we're going to practice it today. We're going to walk into the grocery, and if, in fact, he's fussing, then he's not getting to read the book when we get back home because he fussed on the way. So that there are some opportunities where parents can practice with their child these strategies at a time. Someone wrote, you know, it can be embarrassing. Absolutely. I mean, I've walked out of the grocery store and left my cart full there because my child was having a meltdown. And believe me, I thought in my head, I hope none of my students are in this grocery store while this is happening. But it happens. It happens to all of us. And I think when many of us see parents struggling with kids, our natural reaction is, do you need anything? Is there anything I can do to help you right now? Because we've all been there. We can empathize with it. Anybody who's been a parent or a teacher and has been out or had a niece and nephew out in public who had a meltdown knows, yeah, this is rough, but it happens. So thinking about opportunities where we can practice that aren't high stakes, so we have the opportunity to leave if it's not going well. Yeah, Andy.
Oh, no, and I was just going to say the importance of consistency. So running is tricky because there are safety issues involved, but sort of pre-planning or thinking about these things ahead of time, safety issues, and like Mickey said, and then being consistent with how you handle the situation.
Someone just mentioned 2 choices. I think that's great too. You know, do you want me to hold your left hand or your right hand? Which side do you want to walk on? There could be choices you give children even in things like that. Do you want to hold my hand or do you want to hold onto the cart? You need to hold on to one while we're in the grocery store. But you can do either. You could walk along the cart. You could sit in the cart. I used to let my son ride on the front of the cart, you know. I don't know. Maybe that's not okay, but I did. So, you know, you didn't have a choice of running around in the grocery store. He was older. He was a preschooler by then. All right, Ami, you want to add anything else?
No, I just think just remembering some of those non-negotiables, and you can still make an offer, offer them choices for those non-negotiables, but it's not a negotiable. Like, should we put your car seat on or no? You know, that's not a negotiable thing. But you can say, do you want to hold your toy? Do you want to hold this toy or this toy while you're sitting in your car seat while we drive? I mean, those are the choices that you've made. Just like I think Susan said, that you have to think of choices that you can live with.
And preparing, I mean, and we talked about planning. So we're going to the grocery to buy some milk tonight. Remember, you need to hold my hand while we walk across the parking lot. And once we get inside, you can choose, hold the cart or hold Mommy's hand. Are there other questions, Susan, that we should address now before moving on?
Yep. There actually is one more, and I kind of picked it out of comments. And it's kind of a 2-part question. And the first one is, how do you help families who reinforce negative behavior by giving hugs when the child tantrums or has difficulty with transitions, and they reinforce that behavior? And the second part of that question really has to do with families who, when you're providing these suggestions, and you know they just don't seem to want to follow through with them. I mean, and I know, again, we need to kind of be a detective, but those seem to be kind of the thoughts that are coming through in some of these comments as well. So can you respond to those?
Yeah, so this is Ami. So I think one of the things we need to remember, again, is like, you know, we start where the family is. And I think we, you know, those recommended practices I pointed out earlier in the webinar is like, okay, what is it that, you know, what do the families come with, and then what can we do to help them and support them? So maybe they're not quite ready to hear, you know, some of the suggestions we have. And one of the tips I think that Anne talked about was, even if we give them so many suggestions, we really need to give families time to consider and think about those suggestions, because they're not going to change their life for you because you say something to them. This will change, you know, this will change something you know, most of the interventionists, you see families once a week, if that, or maybe every other week, and they're not going to change the routines in life for you because you're not with them 24/7. You don't see what happens with their child, and so think about how you share some of these information with them, making sure that they have enough time to really consider, and then working with their own routines, their issues, what considerations they have that's going on that you need to that will help them. Okay, maybe doing a little small step. You know, that it's easier for us to say, oh, just do this. When for a family, it's not always, you know, they're not ready to hear it. They're not. It's a little difficult. Some parents, you know, I was just listening on the way here, listening to NPR, and there was a little segment that they were talking about how people, once they have a belief about something, it's harder to change them, even though you might tell them, this is really going to be good, this is really going to change you. Once they have a held-on belief about something, they're not going to, the more that you force them into it, they said it's harder to change their mind, and the more they move away from it. So the key thing that they talked about, and I sat in my car for a while because I wanted to hear what the solution was that they said that you really need to work with them. Okay, what is it? Where are you coming from on this? Why do you believe that? And then understanding what they're coming with, and then kind of going back and forth with them, trying to help them consider all these possible solutions or options for them. So I don't know, Anne or Mickey.
I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. All right. It looks like that was about the last of the questions, so I think we're ready to go on.
All right, so the third tip really is looking at how we can help parents and think about what can they do to teach transition skills to their children during transitions. And the key thing here is really helping parents understand that doing it the first time, it's not always going to work. Mm-hmm. And so that they need to be patient, and that they really need to be consistent when they're working with their child. So it's helpful to discuss with parents that everything will not go as planned when working on the transition the first time, and that when teaching these skills the first time you work on washing hands, bubbles may end up everywhere. So making sure that parents know that it's okay. It's going to be okay, you know. So you'll get water down on off the side of the sink. It's okay. You can just wipe that down, but let's keep trying. Toddlers, they can hold a diaper or the box of wipes as you prepare them for diaper changing. So those are some of those little skills that can help you, that can help parents then go through some of these transitions. Toddlers can learn to wash their hands with assistance. We know that, and it's not that it's an impossible thing. So physically, for some children, it may be more, they may need more assistance. But then they can participate in some of these routines as well. If you have a child who can hold up their arms while you're dressing them, that's a great thing. That's a little thing, but yeah, that is part of them being part of that transition. Or they can put a toy in and out of a tub at bath time, or they can carry a spoon to the high chair when they're about ready to eat their snacks. But the key thing here is using them consistently and then following through them. So making sure that you use phrases like, first we do this, then we do this. Okay, first we go wash hands, then we go eat. And that's really important to remember. It's really funny because I think for my 9-year-old daughter, okay, first you put your coat on, then you can tell mommy what that important thing you really want to say, because there's always, that's her style now of dawdling. It's like, I've got something to say to you, and you could tell she's trying to think of something to tell me, but you're going, okay, no, put your coat on right now. All right, so here's another quote that I think many parents have also shared as they deal with their child's routines, issues, and concerns. So when we plan ahead, teach skills, and carefully consider transitions, then parents' lives can really get less stressful, more enjoyable. And with more positive parenting, it means that they have more positive interactions with their child. So when you think about your times that when you're at home or when you're the family in the community, where have you been most successful in teaching parents to teach their children? So use the chat box to respond to share some of your responses. So like, you know, when I see a parent struggling or during transition between routines, I can brainstorm with a parent how they might make this time less stressful for everyone. Or you could say, sometimes I share with parents some things I have observed other parents are doing, so there's no judgment or pressure. For example, I might say, I was recently on another home visit, and I noticed that this mom and her toddler, blah, 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 blah. So think about some of these things. Mid-tantrum, modeling a reaction strategy for helping them through it, okay? So sometimes, you know, like you wish that there was just like a little, you know, like a bug in your ear kind of thing where you're going, okay, so now, you know, this is the time to do this. I attempt to be concrete with my suggestions, absolutely. And I think we talked about that, about being specific with children.
Pointing out successes.
Yes, pointing out successes, big things. And especially for parents who are, like Maria, the one question earlier about some parents who maybe are a little bit more slow in terms of making a change or resistance to change, that giving them little victories to really help to produce some of those bigger changes. It's a great response.
Visuals, lots of comments about visuals.
Yes. Okay, here's another quote that from another parent. And this is more of a success story, and it's really a nice way to remind us that, yes, parents do eventually feel successful with support from others. Okay. So when you're thinking about work, so as you work with parents and our caregivers, one of the things that we recommend to do is to make sure that you do have additional information and resources that they can investigate if the transition issues continue. So if you've tried many things, okay, so then what else? You don't want to be stuck with like both of you staring at this child tantruming, and then you're going, okay, I'm out of ideas. Okay, let's just walk out of here. So you really want to make sure that you do have some additional information and resources in your back pocket. And one of the handouts that you can download from this webinar is a list of all these resources that we've gathered specifically around transition. The other thing that we want to make sure that you do, especially as you think about working with parents and you're providing them with some of these suggestions, is really provide a clear plan of what needs to happen next. So you might say, do you want to try this for this week? How about when I come back next week, you tell me what happened? Okay, and so it's really important for them to have like kind of like a next step plan. All right. So here, these are just some of the resources that we found related to transitions. So these are some local materials that were developed by the Illinois Early Learning Program, and they develop a lot of materials, particularly for classrooms. But these ones were specific to parents. And what's really interesting about these is it focuses on very on subject matters like math, language and literacy, art, science. And these things, if you click onto them, they give you specific suggestions on what activities you might be able to do while you're waiting with your child. Okay, so there are more tip sheets around fuss management, helping children handle disappointments, and then more resources. This other one, the Center on Social Emotional Foundations for Early Learning has a really good responsive routines inventory that really is helpful in terms of thinking about, okay, if there's some issues around transitioning into bathroom routines, what are some ideas? What are some things to think about? There's also the environment planning for infants and toddlers. It's really kind of interesting to see what kinds of things you might want to do to set up the environment at home and in programs, in centers, to help children go through transitions more smoothly. Okay, so I won't go through all of these ones. But then TAXI, which is kind of like the sister organization of CSAFO, the prior slide, also has some really good things for that, and these are more like for parents that you can use with parents, so you can download it, you can help You can help them. You can help parents kind of read through them. You can maybe use it as a way to talk them through some of this strategy. So here's one. I know that many of you talked about visual schedules, and so this one talks about how to use visual schedules to help your child understand expectations. So here are my expectations for you. Well, we're at the grocery store, so how do you do that? And yeah, so Susan said that everybody will get a handout. And there's more. Making life easier is designed for parents and caregivers. Lots and lots of good things. So there's several ones on running errands, on diapering, dealing with holidays. We just got through that because we know routines change, particularly around these big holidays, and so that's really important. And then 0 to 3 is another organization that you could really get some information, and this one in particular, news you can use on transitions, are really interesting comments. Many of these information, there was a question, are available in Spanish, so you have to go to the site to see which ones are available in Spanish. Not all of them, but many of them are available in Spanish. And then I think the ones for the Illinois Early Learning Program, they're also available, I believe, in Mandarin Chinese and maybe Polish. Yeah. So they are available. And those ones you can just download, or if you don't have a way to print them out for parents, you can contact them and they can send you copies of them by mail.
So we're kind of winding down on time. We just have a couple more minutes. Susan, do you want to throw out any questions, or should we kind of wind down and finish telling them about the certificate?
I've been kind of monitoring the chat. This is Maria, and I haven't really seen any questions come through. Lots of comments, lots of strategies being shared. So I think we can probably move on.
Okay. So just kind of in summary then, I'll just summarize the next slide and then I'll pass it back over to, there we go, key takeaways. Then I'll pass it back over to Marie and Susan. So kind of key takeaways that we hope you received from listening to this webinar is individualizing. So thinking about the infant toddler's unique strengths and abilities, as well as the families. I think as we've talked some too and seen your comments, thinking about that individual family. How much can they handle right now? What point are they at? What are their particular needs and desires? Planning ahead, the importance of being thoughtful, looking ahead. Also engaging the child. So thinking about how can I get the child engaged as we walk from the car to this grocery store? What kind of songs can we sing? What can we talk about? Helping the child learn some new skills as we're teaching those necessary skills as we engage in the transition so that it won't be so challenging. And then we also tried to share some information or give you some ideas of how you can then share these strategies with families and other caregivers. And again, thinking through those individual families and caregivers. And finally, the strategies that Ann, Ami, and I have shared work with all children. So they work with infants and toddlers who are typically developing, and also infants and toddlers who might have already identified delays or disabilities. So these strategies work with children across the spectrum as far as their abilities and strengths that they bring to us.
Okay, so just a quick thing, if you have any ideas of what you want to follow up on, if you have other topics that you want the ITP maybe perhaps to address in a future webinar, and maybe not this, not in the near future because there's some already scheduled out there, but if there are topics, we'd love to hear from you and what you think are, what you're struggling with, what are some of the topics that parents are struggling with. And I just want to put in a plug, so next Wednesday we're going to do a similar webinar, but this time on bedtime routines and sleeping, so it'll be fun. So
don't come tired.
Yeah, don't come tired. We need you awake, but we'll be talking about that next.
Just wanted to say thank you, and we have the information, the emails for all three of our presenters today. If you have any specific questions, you can always follow up directly with them. So thank you all, and we'll talk to you next time.